So, kind of fun little first go. So, I am now unmuted, and my name is Bud Gibson, and I am Director of the Center for Digital Engagement. And I'm excited to invite you here, or to welcome you here to our first session so I am getting all sorts of okay, these are past messages about how I'm muted. Okay, so it wouldn't really be a session unless we had some technical difficulties with a little bit of a delay. So I'm Bud Gibson, Director of the Center for Digital Engagement, and this is the first session of the Digital Marketing Workshop titled fortuitously New Beginnings. And I'm here with Jenn Hayman, Director of Marketing for Human Element. And we've had Jenn many times before. She was Director of Marketing for Zingerman's in a past incarnation, and she's worn many hats over the years in the Ann Arbor area. And she is here today. And so, Jenn, please tell us what we've got cooking for today for New Beginnings.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So we are going to be talking with my boss, Ben Lorenz, managing partner of Human Element, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the best practices of online branding and creating a powerful user experience.
And I should note, we're having some slight technical difficulties. We were also going to have Drew Patrick on, and if Drew is able to join us, then we will bring him on mid-show, but we're going to press ahead. For updates about the Digital Marketing Workshop, just come back to the same place where you are now. And then also, thedigitalmarketingworkshop.com will have links to today's sessions and future sessions, which will be taking place all this week at noon. And so I will let you take it away with Ben for now, Jenn.
All right, great. Hi, Ben.
Hi, how's everyone doing?
Thanks for joining us. So I'm going to have you start out by telling us a little bit about Human Element and your role there.
Well, I started in the e-commerce industry in 95 or 96 at a small company here in Ann Arbor called Fry, and it was called Fry Multimedia at the time, and we started building e-commerce sites for some of the largest e-commerce brands that you can imagine. We worked on 1-800-Flowers, Eddie Bauer, Crate and Barrel, Domino's Pizza. Like, basically, as e-commerce was starting to become a thing, we started to build custom applications for that. And so I worked there I was employee number 50, and we grew to well beyond 200 people, very quickly. And it was the time that venture capital people were dumping lots of money into companies. And so I rode that wave through the dot-com boom and through the dot-com bust. And then decided to relax my life a little bit and explore some of my musical side, and got out for a little while. And about 16 years ago, started Human Element. And the idea behind Human Element was, let's do some consulting. Let's do the things that we do really well, and bring this, entrepreneurial side to the consulting work that we do. And so it started off primarily as a lifestyle business. We just wanted to grow and bring good ideas to good companies in Michigan. We were very focused on Michigan. And as it grew, we became bigger and bigger and bigger. Now we started taking it a lot more seriously, less of a lifestyle business, and as Jenn knows, it's become a pretty successful operation. We're about 50 people here in Ann Arbor, and my job has been to help lead the company through that growth. I've had to learn a lot about being a leader and being humble in that position, and have basically been able to play almost every role in the company. And so I have, jack of all trades, master of none is how I look at it.
And your partner in crime at Human Element that you started the company with is Jason McGee, who you guys have been friends since you were 14 and was also your bandmate, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I started off my career, I was going to be a music major. My father was a touring musician. And I spent the first 4 years of my life living in a van touring around the country with my dad and my mom. And as I got older, I was like, that's the life for me. I'm going to go be a touring musician. And Jason and I started a band when we were 14 years old and built it up to a pretty sizable operation here in Michigan. We toured for 6 years, had a small development deal with RCA Records, and then realized pretty quickly that it's very difficult to succeed in the music business, no matter how good you are or how good you think you are. And went back to school and got my degree.
Nice. Well, it seems to have worked out for both of you.
We're very happy. We still run a pretty decent sized recording studio here in Willis, Michigan. And we have local bands and we do some commercial work, and that's really our passion. That's one of the things about Human Element, is that we're a group of very entrepreneurial people, but we're all expected to have a pretty firm work-life balance where you're bringing something that you do and something that's unique from outside of your work life and bring it back to the company where it makes you a nicely rounded individual.
Nice. And music is something very woven into Human Element, I have noticed. I feel like I am one of the only people that works there that does not play a musical instrument or have some beautiful songbird voice. So maybe in a future life, I will be gifted with those talents.
But I hear you like to go to a lot of concerts, so you have
I do. I am a music snob, if that counts for any kind of expertise.
Well, to sort of bring that philosophy into view and how we incorporate that philosophy into a company situation is, if you think about a company or a team that you're working with, like a band, in order to have a good product, y'all have to work as a team to make this happen. And there are points in the music where you might have a soloist that steps out and plays something really nice, and the band backs them up while they're doing their solo. And then the soloist steps back and the band, collaborates again, and they communicate really intensely. And so we start to look at our business teams kind of like a musical performance, really.
Yeah, and I love that. I think that it becomes evident in the work that you do for the client too, that it is very much a holistic look at what a client needs. It's not just kind of addressing one piece independent of the rest. So let's talk about that a little bit, because I'm wondering a bit about COVID, and obviously it's turned everybody's world upside down. 2020 will be one to remember for a lot of different reasons for people who have lived through the pandemic and are still living obviously through the pandemic. But how has it impacted Human Element's clients' businesses, and has it changed sort of the problems and solutions that they come to the agency for?
Well, in a sort of like ironic twist, the day prior to the governor issuing a stay-at-home order, our IT team, or our internal DevOps team, was testing a new firewall update at our location that was going to allow everyone to work from home. For some reason, we had been working up to this for a large infrastructure project, and on that day that we were going to test it, the stay-at-home order was issued, and we all went. What's that?
So you jinxed it.
Well, it just happened. It was dumb luck, honestly, that we were able to pretty much turn the switch and be a work from home company. Now, as you can imagine, we work on a lot of websites, and in order to do that, you have anywhere upwards of about 300 development systems that we service at any given time. And so the infrastructure required to do that safely and securely has to be in place, and we just happened to do it on that day. And so for us as a company, we had the infrastructure to do it, and working in a digital world, we have a lot of tools like Zoom and collaboration software and all that kind of stuff. So we're able to adjust and adapt pretty quickly. I think one of the key elements of Human Element too is that we are a company that is driven by these types of challenges. And so when this happened, we pivoted very quickly. We were like, oh gosh, we could totally do this. And then boom, we did it. And so we had our clients from their situation, they were like, oh gosh, we're all sitting at home now. We're not in the office. We want to do some projects that we can do remotely. And so we're sort of guiding them along in how to do projects remotely and virtually. And so as luck would have it, we were not a company that during this time had a downturn of work. You can imagine that everybody who is home, who has an e-commerce business or something like that, is like, well, now this is how we're going to do 100% of our business. And their projects started to ramp up. And so Human Element has seen a growth during this period where we've seen unique requests for how customers want to interact with their end users through digital means. And I talk about this a lot with our clients, but what we're seeing, and we'll call it our digital IQ. So the end users, the people who buy the products of our customers, their digital IQ during this period has like increased in maturity very quickly. As you can imagine, you might be someone who was going to the grocery store every day, but now you're on the Amazon app ordering pickup from Whole Foods. And you didn't do that 3 months ago. You now are an expert at doing this. And so my digital IQ is improving, tremendously. And so what we're in the business of is meeting customers where they're at. So now we have a user base that expects the grocery store to have an online portal, show me accurate inventory, give me accurate pricing, and check out with Apple Pay and deliver it to my house within 30 minutes or I'm unsatisfied.
Yeah, and that accurate inventory is really tricky for a lot of businesses to get.
It is. And so when we start to think about what Human Element does for customers is at the end of the day, we're trying to meet them where they're at and meet their expectation. For years, we would sit in a meeting with large clients and they'd be like, well, just do that thing like Amazon does. We're like, oh, well, how many hundreds of millions of dollars went into researching that feature and made it happen? And so I think we're at a point where the expectations of the customers are sort of outstripping the ability of some of these organizations to meet their digital needs. So if everybody all of a sudden believes that we should order groceries online and they should show up at our house, you have to have a lot of infrastructure to do that and to do it well. And so you see the companies who are positioned well to do that right away, Amazon being one of them. They could throw 1,000 engineers at this and all of a sudden you've got online ordering for Whole Foods. But Kroger, had this kind of digital transformation coming in at a different pace. Now they do have that ability now, and they've got some in-store scanners and stuff like that. So outside of the grocery industry, we'll just talk about that for a second. Everyone is having this sort of awakening that like, oh, I was thinking about this, but now it's a real priority to the business. And so online transactions are more than just a want or a desire. It's what is expected. And so what we're finding is we're enhancing systems for companies very rapidly to meet these new expectations.
Yep. And then there's also been a shift, I think, and a growth in some businesses that were just B2B that are now branching out into B2C for the first time. And that's a very different model and a very different, from a marketing perspective, certainly, but even from, how your website interacts with the user.
Well, I think in that scenario as well, you can see where in Michigan, we'll talk about Michigan, for example, we have a lot of manufacturers here. And the manufacturers ship their products to brick and mortar stores that sell these things. Well, COVID hits, right? Brick and mortar closed down. All of a sudden, I've got a manufacturer who would like to stay in business. That's the primary goal of an operation, is to make a profit, right? And so they're finding clever ways to get their products to market. One of those ways is to go direct to consumer. And so for the last 10 years, as e-commerce is becoming mainstream, manufacturers and this is a big concept, but manufacturers have been trying to support their channel sales. And by channel sales, I mean, I really want to support the distribution network for my products. I want to support the brick and mortar companies that sell my products where people walk into the store and buy them, right? But as margins start to become thinner, right, I need to have other ways to sell products at a higher margin. And so if you think about what's happened with this equation is COVID hits, all of a sudden, the distribution network that I relied so heavily on as a manufacturer goes away. It's no longer a profit center for me. I need to find a way to survive, and I'm going to sell directly to my customers. And so where we saw an adoption of this e-commerce, direct selling to customers start to ramp up. You're seeing bike manufacturers do this now. You're seeing other manufacturing sectors start to sell direct. We've seen a very rapid adoption of manufacturers selling direct to customers almost immediately. They were like, we were working on it. And so you've got some who had projects in process and just turned them on. And now our phone is, you can probably hear my phone ringing in the background. It's like 4 manufacturers calling a day saying, we need to do this now because we want to sell direct. And so it's a big paradigm shift in our world to see that happen. And so it's not only the e-commerce system, right, that is the piece that needs to be created, because we can sell things all day. Anybody who's on here could probably go set up a Shopify site in the next 4 hours and be selling online. Manufacturers have the added complexity of trying to understand how their ERP system, and when I say ERP, it's an enterprise resource planning system, like that handles all their inventory, their cost of goods, all these things. It's a big piece of software in the back end that they have to accommodate and integrate in with their e-commerce system so that when they sell something out on the front end, it decrements from the back end. They can order more materials to go build more products. And so they've got this sort of like, I'd say a 360 integration with their manufacturing capability and their ability to sell. And so from a systems standpoint, it's not just a simple turn it on. It's I have to do all of these things in sequence so I can actually sell online accurately.
Yeah, I think a lot of us that are used to sort of just pressing, auto purchase on Amazon think it just kind of happens automatically on the back end.
Yeah, I call that like the $100 million button. Like they probably put that much effort into that button, and I'm sure as we know, has probably made them that and much more.
Yeah.
But the amount of technology that goes into a feature like that is pretty significant. And so from a business to business perspective and a business to consumer perspective, everyone's digital IQ is raising. They're like, I need this ability now to survive in our new paradigm. And I think that's the really that's the key message to take away from a big event like this or future events, right? Is like, do I have the imagination to plan for what might occur in the future? And we know everybody could say, well, e-commerce is totally the future, yeah, but that's a big job, and so you have to have a real strong commitment from a company to dedicate a big software project to build this, to make it work properly.
Yep, absolutely, and pick the right partners to do it. So when it comes to these, I think that especially with Christmas coming, right? I mean, it's the traditional Black Friday has changed a lot anyways, and now there's Cyber Monday, and I saw that Target is doing Black Friday all month, and so that more traditional model has kind of evolved anyway, or devolved depending on which place that you shop at. But in the absence of a physical storefront, how would you recommend that brands provide that same high-touch experience for their customers?
This is a big one, and this gets into like real software problems. So I think that you see a little, there are the people who want to support a brand. Like, I'm really into certain brands and I'm really into my local economy and I want to support them. But when I go to those online brands or the presence that they have, their approach to online selling is rudimentary compared to Amazon. You know, when I buy AirPods or a widget, you name it, I buy that on Amazon. They tell me I'm going to get it. If I order now in 2 hours, I'll get it tomorrow by noon, right? And then literally a van shows up. They put it on my porch. They take a picture of it. The picture goes to my phone. I get it at work and I'm like, oh, it's on my porch. Honey, could you go get the package off the porch? Open it up. It's the right thing almost all the time. They're like 99% accurate. And that experience is what I would call a super high touch experience. Now, if I ordered a gift or something from Hollanders downtown in Carytown, who is no longer in that space, and I love them. They're an online store now. They used to be one of our clients. That is a very different experience. It goes through the post office. It might go through FedEx. I won't get the high touch email marketing that occurred throughout the process. And then at the very end, Amazon's like, well, how'd you like that product? Could you come back and rate it? Right? And so every step of the way, they've created a value proposition for the transaction. Like, not only did they meet your expectation, they then solicited your feedback at the end and you felt like they knew you, right? Not only did they know you, they stored that information and then marketed to you later. Okay, you bought the AirPods, you probably need a charger for them, and I'll get an ad for a charger 2 days later, right? So I guess the shorter story of this is that for local companies and for smaller organizations to start to meet these expectations that customers have, they have to do big technology projects. The technology project isn't necessarily the problem. It's having enough people in these smaller organizations that understand that this is possible and understand that how they can do it, right? And so currently, people are coming to Human Element and saying, well, I know I need to do this. How do I do this, right? And so there's this range of like, well, this is cheap and inexpensive to do. This is like very expensive to do. And so we go through the process of determining, hey, where's your ROI, return on investment, in this process? Well, what I really need is I just need to make sure that my email confirmation is accurate. If we just did that, right, we can build on that. And so that's the level that we get down to with Human Element. We're trying to work with customers to say, okay, your customer's digital IQ is raising. Can we meet them in this purchase chain, and what is affordable for you to do as a company? And do you, as a company, have the ability to meet what your customers are asking for? A lot of customers struggle with this. I know that was a long-winded answer, but these are the types of things that we're, if I'm talking to somebody out there who's studying to be in this market or in this field, I would say there is a deep need in the workplace today for somebody to understand the business processes and workflow of how this technology works and what its impact is on an organization. That's very hard to go study, by the way. When I got into this business, I was a business major. Every class that I took was about, make a business plan, do these things. And when I got into the e-commerce field, there was absolutely no relation to what they taught me in school and what I was thrown into. My first week at Fry Multimedia, I got a $1 million budget for Discovery credit cards. And they sent me out to their headquarters to meet with them and put together a plan for some digital transformation project they were doing to communicate to all these customers. And I was like, nobody did this before. We invented it along the way. And so I think we're in this period now where we're trying to replicate things that Amazon and some of the other bigs are doing, but there aren't a lot of people that understand truly how to get there. And the real differentiator is Amazon's got it down so well that not only do they do all these pieces in the business process workflow, they have a business analysis and like statistical analysis tool that says these parts of the process are doing really well and these parts of the process are not. And that is an entirely different role in their organization, where they can come back and do an analysis of what got built and say whether it was, beneficial to the company or not. And so they're running at a pace that is almost unfair, right? Like manufacturing companies that build a product just don't have the intelligence horsepower to keep up with that.
Right.
And so how do they compete today, right? It's on being boutique. It's about being high touch enough. It's about really controlling your brand messaging and answering to your customers in a high touch way, and build from there.
Yep. And I think,
sorry.
so we're going to be opening to audience questions in about 3 minutes. But I do have one other question. So you mentioned boutique, high touch, controlling your brand messaging. Because if you're a new business and you have to prioritize your efforts, if you've previously had little to no online presence, kind of where do you start? What are the most important things that you can do to, create that revenue stream that might have evaporated during COVID?
Yeah, I think, that's a very tough position, especially if you're in the position of having to educate yourself on all of this stuff while you're trying to do it. You're swimming in deep waters, basically. You've got a lot of other companies who are ahead of you and have a baseline that's already occurring. But what I'd say to somebody who needs to start, we'll just say the scenario of starting at ground zero. Use commonly accepted tools. BigCommerce is a great e-commerce platform to get started with. It's cloud-based. You can log in, you can set up an account. They do the payment gateway for you. Like they do leapfrogs of your learning. Like you don't need to build or learn how to do all this stuff. Shopify is another good platform to do this on. You log in, you create an account, you can set up a store, hook it up to your bank. You can be selling stuff in, a short period of time. Those are really good tools. And that gets you into the selling business all of a sudden. Both of those tools have pretty good off-the-shelf integrations with QuickBooks. And so if you're a QuickBooks user, you can set up an API key between the two, and when you're doing this, you'll learn what that means. And boom, you're connected into your accounting system. The beauty of the technology today is that there's a lot of stuff that's easier to do because a lot of people have made the software pretty accessible, right? You're not going to get to Amazon level for, $60 a month in software licensing costs, but you're going to get pretty darn far to be able to sell the few products that you have, or even 1,000, right? And have that integrated in with QuickBooks. You can do that for less than 10 grand today in a meaningful way and have a pretty good business.
Yep. And then the marketing is on the side of it, where you're still communicating with your customers via social and all of those things. Because, all of those tools, I think, have really great integration with email marketing tools and all the different social media scheduling tools.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for a newbie in this business, I would go Google Analytics, MailChimp, BigCommerce, or Shopify, QuickBooks. Right there, you've got a pretty powerful tool set. That stuff alone right there, 20 years ago, like $4 million.
Yeah.
Today you could probably get that for like a few $100s a month in cloud software licensing.
Yeah, and I would imagine too, those businesses are probably doing a lot of ramping up and chasing their own tails, since there's been such a huge demand for their services from maybe a different market than they were serving before.
Yep. Well, you've got a lot of business to business type companies, light manufacturing, who are trying to get into this, and they're trying to make B2C systems serve their B2B needs. And so you're seeing the Shopifys and the big commerce companies trying to propel themselves and position themselves to be like, oh, well, we're business to business as well. It's a longer road to get to business requirements, frankly.
Yeah. So, but I'll bring it over.
Hour probably, or two.
I'll bring it back over to you, Bud, to open it up to audience questions.
Well, that's great. We're certainly enjoying this, Ben and Jenn. Kind of nice that your names rhyme. And we have some great audience questions, but I want to make sure that we get a little shout out here to Ben from somebody named Carissa Wilder, who just simply says, Ben! So we didn't want Carissa to feel left out there. I don't know if she says her name, Carissa. I'm just assuming. Okay, great. Well, we have some questions, and some of these folks got them in early, so I want to make sure to get to them. And they come from a slightly different angle, and I like this one by Lori Golden. Lori says, and there's a couple in this regard, so we'll move down those, but we'll start off with her. How are companies adjusting to seniors and people that are not technically proficient? Because, we're talking about company difficulty, right? Gee, how do I suddenly take my system and move it online? But, we may have people on the other end who are having difficulty themselves. And so aren't technically proficient or don't have access to technology. So I'll throw that over to you guys to answer.
One of the things I used to do a lot of UI and UX design, and that's basically designing interfaces. I used to send it all over to my mom, who's in her 70s. I'd be like, Mom, does this make sense? No, she was afraid to click on the mouse. She thought she'd break it, and so she was a good litmus test for some of the things that I designed in it. But I think the real thing there is the design is starting to come down to where people don't need to understand the technology and all the underpinnings behind it to interface with it. And probably one of the best examples of that is, your iPhone, right? Is you have non-technical users that are doing very technical things today with simple user interfaces. And this has started to come down into software, where I would encourage anyone here to try to go configure a big commerce store. 10 years ago, you couldn't make an e-commerce store on your own. Today, it requires a lot less technical ability. And so if you're a user who's at like 0, like I can't log into a computer, I don't know how a browser works, it's going to be tough for you. But if you have some notion of how browsers work, you can internet, as I like to say, or you can do the socials. You're probably going to be able to figure out most of these types of tools, as long as you understand what you're trying to achieve. And I think that's the big thing there is somebody in a meeting, with maybe non-technical people, they're like, well, we must learn how to sell online immediately, and everybody looks around the room, they're like, well, what does that mean? Where do I start? Your best solution right there is to go out to upworks.com and hire a consultant and ask them the same question, and they'd be like, oh, XYZ, and then hire them and bring them into your organization as a consultant and pay them to educate you. That'd be my advice. Upworks is a great resource for anybody who's trying to get into any portion of this game.
Well, great. And that sounds like some practical advice. And I will also mention that tomorrow at 12 noon, we will be hosting a panel on Digital Main Street, or Main Street Digital actually is the title. And the key thing is we're going to have some small business people who were suddenly thrust into having to go online, and what did they do? And we have some infrastructure providers, and then we actually have small business people. So that should be an interesting discussion for people looking at it from that end. I have another one for you, Ben, from somebody, and I have no idea. I'm assuming her last name is pronounced Mate. It's Mathe, not sure, but it's Vicky Mate. And she's saying, what can education consultants do to sell whole course curricula online? Now, she's asked a number of questions, and I think, and I bring this up because basically the field of education, my field, has been suddenly shoved into all of this stuff we were supposed to do face-to-face. We're now supposed to do online. It's the high-touch environment that Jenn is describing, but also sort of continuous interaction. And I think Vicky is kind of saying, well, gee, what can, her bigger question is, as an educator, what can you do? As somebody trying to help educators, what can I do? So
Yeah, I think this is also an area, especially given the current circumstances, that we've seen the need for this type of digital transformation to occur. My kids have the option to go to school or to have online classes, and the classroom has cameras in it, and they're able to tune in and be a part of it physically or through Zoom. And we've had to see people's digital IQ jump as a result of this. Well, how do I get into a Zoom meeting? My camera doesn't work, or my microphone. And so I think there's a couple things here, and you can probably do a 4-hour thing on this, but there's economic opportunity in this for educators. One, in building small pods, we'll use the COVID nomenclature of educators that can work with groups of students, right, in a digital way and in a physical way, both ways. And I think there's opportunity for people that understand how to communicate digitally to work with educators, to train them on better ways to do this. And you mentioned selling. And so you might need to combine technologies to make this a reality. There are some education platform tools to do some of this stuff. I'm not super familiar with that aspect, but from a consulting standpoint, there needs to be people that get it to create groups where I'm going to have a group of educators. I'm going to show them how to set up Zoom meetings. I'm going to show them how to monetize it. And I'm going to show them how to sell materials. And you could sell materials through BigCommerce or Shopify. And you could do the communication stuff through any one of the, we're using Skype today, but you could also do Zoom or others. To do that and have small education groups that are active throughout the thing. The one big thing I've noticed is it's now really available. I have a math tutor for my kids right now, and it's a young college student who's very, very good at it, but she's made a business out of doing this from her house, and I didn't realize it was so easily available today. And so as everyone's IQ in this stuff is raising, I think we're going to see a much broader economy around education for this kind of stuff. And to your point earlier, the people who are older and maybe don't understand how this stuff works, they're going to have to go hire somebody to help them get into position to do it.
Yeah, I would just add too, from the parent perspective of two kids that are doing the Ann Arbor Public Schools virtually now, gosh, what I wouldn't pay for that one-on-one interaction with my kid to take them through stuff that, man, I was terrible at that in high school. I'm not going to be any of help to you in your advanced chemistry right now. So those sort of things. I would imagine that there's got to be a really strong market for the tutoring and the small group kind of learning, because that's a lot of what's lost in the current online education.
We live in a day, though, right now, today, where you can take a writing course from like Neil Gaiman. You could take a writing course or a history course from somebody famous. And I think, so in some ways we're ushering into a beautiful age of education and being able to share some knowledge from really incredible educators. If they just had the one person that could help them get online, I mean, and that's not hard to do, frankly.
Okay, well, great. And let me just give a quick update because Vicky told us in the comments that her last name is actually pronounced Math. So want to make sure to get on to that one. And so as you were talking, Ben and Jen, we had Kathy. Now, here's another one of these last names. Kvasnik, I'm assuming it's pronounced Kvasnak. You must have been reading my mind. Why not hire people who would be part of the audience and engage them in your future planning and implementation? I think companies tend to avoid involving their target audiences. And I think this comes on to the whole issue of incorporating interactivity and feedback into your online strategy. It's not just a set it and forget it. And I'd like to throw in too that, at the Center for Digital Engagement, digital, right? We did a lot of in-person events and plan to do them again, perhaps in the not too distant future. And we had to completely convert over. We had to look up tools. I think it was the fact that we had several people helping us, members of the team who would figure these things out and teach other members of the team that really got us there. But let's kind of get back to Kathy's point, which is, interacting with your target audience, finding out, what it is they want. And Ben, do you have any experience? I'm sure you do, that would speak to that.
Absolutely. And that's one of the ways that we're able to prove out, tweaks or pivots that we make to features for our client software. We use one tool that we will install, and it sits basically in front of an e-commerce store. It's called Hotjar, and it basically records users as they go through the site, and we see them where they get stopped, in a particular user action, or there's a transaction they're trying to make and they stop, or oftentimes they stop in shipping, right? Because shipping is, oh gosh, Americans don't like to pay for shipping. That's just a side note. I'm going to throw that out there. Amazon ruined it for all shipping fees to ever be charged in the future. But so we'll use Hotjar to record user interactions on the site. And then we can do a couple different things with that information. We'll go analyze it and see where people got hung up. We can then, Hotjar has a tool to put a survey out onto the website, and I hate surveys. I always drove me crazy, but they actually provide a lot of relevant data, and so we'll go put a survey out there. And then my thing has always been, if you've got someone who's completed an order on your store, go call them. Pick up the phone and be like, I saw you ordered a $5,000 jacket. How do you like it? What was your experience like? There's no substitute. And call me like old guy shaking my fist. Use your words and your human connection abilities to pick up the phone and ask your customers how they're doing. And they will tell you a ton. I mean, this is just, to some degree, it comes down to basic blocking and tackling. I want to know, I want to hear the words from your mouth, because you're going to get a lot more from that interaction. You are also going to ingratiate them to your business, and they're going to become a long-term customer as a result. And so I currently today at Human Element still go call our customers. Call them. How are you doing? What could be done better? How is your project manager doing? I know you spent a lot of money with us, or you're spending a little money with, and I do this sort of informal survey all the time. And so I'd say that for any business owner today, you should be actively, calling people who have reached out to you. Your customers have reached out to you. They want to be engaged with. Now, they don't want you to blast them with emails every day. They don't want that. That's annoying. But if you call them, a certain amount of those people are going to be very happy you did, and they want you to hear their feedback, and they'll give it to you.
Okay, great. I have another question, and this has been echoed a few times in questions here. It's from Sufjan Krunfla, who is the interim head of marketing at Eastern Michigan University. So surprise, surprise that we've got him on here. But this is a question that we're going to get a lot as we go forward. I remember the online grocery idea started early in the year 2000. And in fact, the guy who started Borders actually had an online grocery business for a while, but it failed. Now it seems that everybody wants to do online shopping. Do you think this will end as soon as the pandemic is over, or will this be a new trend? And I think the fun part here is you now get to predict the future, Ben. So I'm gonna just shoot that one up there and let you predict away.
So I believe there's two types of shopping. I'm gonna throw this idea at you. There's the type of shopping you do for your basics, your route type things. I need soap. I need garbage bags. I need these types of things. In my life, and I'll just tell you about myself, is I've got an Amazon cart or something of that nature that stuff just shows up. I now don't make that decision in my mind anymore. Like now I always have garbage bags. I always have, Old Spice body wash. I always have, I just don't think about it anymore, Then I really like to cook. And so here's where my personal preference type shopping starts to come out. I happen to prefer certain types of groceries, right? Like I'm a big fan of Sparrow Market in Carytown here. I go and I look at it and I want to sort of see what I'm buying because I like the quality aspect of it and I like the interaction at the meat market and I want that interaction. But the rest of it comes in a different way. And so I think what we're going to see is we're going to see a maturity of how people get their goods and services over time. And I think it's going to continue to go something like that, where you're going to get your boutique items. Those are the things you want to go shop and where you want to support, the local economy. And I think you're going to have your sort of like blocking and tackling items that are just going to show up. And Amazon owns that business right now, but that's not to say that, another company isn't going to come in and eat their lunch. They're cruising in this direction. There's going to be a new technology or something that is going to be developed that they're going to have to contend with. And that's happening real quick because there's a lot of smart people thinking about different ways to do this today. And we're going to see that in the next 3-4 years. So I think it's going to increase, but I think our decisions around this stuff are going to be split. I don't think online shopping or grocery shopping took hold that long ago because we weren't at a place where the interfaces that we could build worked well on this device. They now work really well on this device.
Yeah, and I'll just add that I think, if Drew Patrick had been able to join us today, he founded a company called Michigan Fields kind of during COVID. And I think it's an interesting model because it sort of seeks to blend that local economy with the convenience of online ordering and home delivery. And that really is what it is. It is leveraging those vendors at Eastern Market in Detroit. And it is leveraging these Michigan, specialty producers and whatnot, and creating kind of that sort of ecosystem that now somebody can say, well, I'm still supporting a local business and I'm still buying, my cheese from this person that I maybe used to get in person at, at this store. And or your produce. A lot of it is produce based, I think, with fruits and vegetables that you would have gotten at the farmer's market before, and maybe now, you aren't going there in person, and yet you can still support that vendor and get that quality delivered to your home. And I think that's kind of an interesting twist on it that I could imagine that sort of gaining some traction.
I think we will see a lot more local type marketplaces like that crop up in the next 3 to 5 years. That's going to be a big growth area. And so if I'm telling the future, there's a lot of smart people that don't want to see all of this economy go to Amazon, frankly.
Yeah.
We don't. Well, I mean, I want to help Michigan businesses. I'm game for that all day long. I will bend over backwards to make it happen here in Michigan. I'm a big fan of it. I was here during the downturn. We lived through it. We grew out of it. And there's a lot of companies here that are deserving of this type of help. And we want to be here for that.
Well, that's great. And let me just throw in a couple of plugs. It really is a shame that we had some technical difficulties with Drew. He is a friend of the Center for Digital Engagement, and hopefully we will find an opportunity to have him on again in the future, and to speak to these issues, particularly as we transition in 2021. And Ben, I really like your point about, we're moving from the world of websites to the world of websites plus mobile apps, or we've actually moved there if you look at usage patterns.
Yeah,
and
a lot of cases.
Yeah, exactly. And so, we're getting to the point where the non-technical user is very used to picking up their phone and doing things. So we have to constantly keep on our toes as sort of technology professionals. Now, I want to throw in a question, and we're getting up towards the end of the broadcast. I want to warn people. So if you have any last minute things you really want to get in, now is the time to do it. But we do have a question. I want to make sure to get some student perspectives in there. We have a question from a student I know who, in fact, interviewed Jenn just last week, Marisa Saliche. And she asks, and let me get it up on screen, what skills do you believe make a standout employee, especially in this remote setting? Because we do definitely have an audience out there that is figuring out, oh my gosh, I'm getting out of school. How do I fit into this emerging normal? So,
yeah, so I'm going to take one step back from that question and then I'll answer it. I think that organizations have a responsibility to be as good of an organization as the employees should be. And what I mean by that is your organization that you're going into or want to be a part of should be serving you as you serve them. And that's really the approach that Human Element takes. We have a strategic plan that we share with the entire company. We have a vision that we share with the entire company. We have core values we share with the entire company. The entire company has the ability to have input on that. And so when you as a young person coming into a company, you're evaluating where you want to work, you want to make sure that that company is serving you as you are serving them. You're going to dedicate a lot of your time and your life to that company, and you want to make sure that it's a two-way street. And so I'd say that first. So the second thing is we have one core value about doing the right thing. And doing the right thing is encompasses all sorts of kind of analysis. Like, what's the right thing for the company that I work for? What's the right thing for me individually? What's the right thing for the client that I may be serving? And so we ask you to basically go through a decision tree of how to get to the right thing. And I guess you could look at this as like just maybe a life lesson too, how you engage with life. Am I doing the right thing? I think when we have people, or my coworkers that I work with, when they come and we engage with them, as long as I see folks going through that sort of decision tree about what the right thing to do is in their life, at work, with their customers, how they're interacting with the visible world, those are the highest qualities that I see. that I look for when I want to work with someone. They stick to it, they get it done, they don't meld into the wallpaper, they're there, they're present, they're engaged. And those are really important qualities, I think, for humans in general, but for humans that I want to work with.
I like that answer a lot because it kind of corresponds with when we work with students in small businesses, which is what we do in our digital summer clinic. They're all small startups, between 1 and 20 people. And I say it's like you're on an ocean-going rowboat, and everybody's got to be rowing, and you've got to contribute to, getting to the other side. And so what you need to be thinking about is what can you do to do that? And there's kind of this thing, I think, tension that students often face between, well, I have this longer term project, and then I have all of these immediate needs that pop up. And, you've got to be careful to make sure that you are also doing the longer term thing, or at least communicating about it, so that there are trade-offs where, look, I'm going to have to drop this because, there are only so many hours in the day, and I'm either going to do this or that. Okay. But keeping that line of communication open with the company and making sure that you are seen as somebody who is contributing to the solution. I take that as part of your do the right thing. I want to close out. Somebody did respond to my, hey, we've got some last minute questions. If you got them, put them up there. So Catress Qualls did this. And she asked kind of a long question. But as we continue to evolve in our new virtual existence, what training tools would you suggest to help businesses maintain their customer base with regard to communication? So, Ben, I think you brought up a couple of these, and she mentions it as the question goes on here. So I think maybe a quick sum up of how to stay in touch with your customers. And then, Jenn, we can let you go. You can take it out after that.
I think in many ways, Jenn might be better positioned to answer this, so chime in when you want to, Jenn. But I do think that educating yourself about what's new today is really important. And so Google has a ton of educational opportunities for people that want to understand pay-per-click advertising, video ads, all that kind of stuff. You can actually go without any costs or fees. You can go register yourself for a Google training to go familiarize yourself with the way that they do advertising online. That's a really good way to go learn. And then your mind gets blown because you realize what Google is actually doing. The other thing is a tool like email marketing is really good to a certain degree, but we used to call it mail to fail, right? Like if you do too much of that, that is like gonna annoy people. But learning about that tool, and so MailChimp, for example, has a lot of really interesting ways and training tools for you to go educate yourself on how to do that. And then putting together a strategy with your team to say, using these two tools, here's a way that we can go measure engagement, because digital marketing today is very different than it was in the past. When you would put out a newspaper ad and then you'd see revenue come into the company, there was really no line drawn between this marketing activity and the revenue that was generated by it. Marketing executives were like, we've had success because we're selling more. Well, now today, there's literally a line drawn between almost everything you do digitally and the result. And so to be able to have a plan that you put together for communicating and then monitor that plan through the data. So you might go try to take a training on Google Analytics and install Google Analytics on your website. And so then you can watch pay-per-click ads come through. You can watch the response rates of your email marketing, and you look at it in Google Analytics and you train yourself on those three things. You can then put a plan together for your company to create a plan, execute the plan, monitor the plan, right?
Yeah, and I'll add to that. There's also, it depends on what you want to learn, but I think even if you just kind of go down some deep rabbit holes of YouTube, there are a lot of really smart people offering free content out there that will a deep dive into a case study if it's really relevant to what you're trying to accomplish, or solving a certain problem with, you're not seeing the results in a campaign that you've activated. And then, the non-digital things I think are still really, really important. It's so important to lean on your network, and people like being asked questions. They like to share what they know with other people. And so, leverage and grow your network of people that you respect and that are experts in different things. And don't be afraid to, to have a virtual coffee with them and pick their brains about this and that. And I do that all the time. And it is always so, I don't mind when people come to me with questions, but I know that there is like a gazillion people out there that are far smarter than I am, that I love to get their perspectives on things. And, I don't think I've ever come away from one of those conversations like, well, I knew all of that. Of course not. All right. Well, thank you, Ben, for hanging in with us and answering all the questions. I know that there's probably a lot of others that came in on Facebook that we haven't gotten to yet. And so maybe we can find a way to cull those and kind of answer those offline and get those questions answered for folks. But thank you very much for joining us, and to Bud for having both Ben and I. And it's been great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was really fun. I feel like in a lot of ways I really had to earn it today. We were missing somebody. Yeah, I think it was a really enjoyable thing to do, and I would be happy to come back and do it again.
Thank you.